mighty, and so are we. The task is mighty, and so are we. The task is mighty, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. The land is holy, and so are we. The land is holy, and so are we. The land is holy, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. Ready, and so are we. The world is ready, and so are we. The world is ready, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be. The tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. The tide is rising, and so are we. This is where we are called to be. This is where we are called to be.
Welcome, welcome everybody. Great to see you all. Feel free. I see a few people have already got started in the chat. Say hi and share with us a little check-in with yourself and with our community. Where are you coming from? It's always fun to see where everybody is joining us from across the world. And on a scale of 1 to 10, how has your week been? You can feel free to explain that if you want, or you can simply just put the number. But it's always fun to see how people are doing and check in together. So feel free to share in the chat. And if there's anything that comes up during worship, you can put it in the chat. And Kristen today is our Zoom host. Thank you, Kristen. So you can message her directly in the drop-down window if you have a question or concern, but feel free to use the chat to everyone as well through worship. I'm not always able to see it. So if it's like a question or something, especially today, we're going to be going through some stuff together. So if you have a question or something, feel free to unmute and shout it out to me. As we get started, we want to continue to remind you that we have a few more weeks that we'll be worshiping here on Zoom. So we're going to be back in person for the first day of spring, which is so perfect. March 20th lands on a Sunday this year. We thought that's the perfect day for us to return to in person. And if you're not getting our weekly emails, I think everybody who's here probably are, but there is a form that Kristen just shared that you can fill out quickly. And that'll get you the Zoom link to join us, and that'll put you on our list for future goings-ons, so you can get that information. And then, of course, we also have online giving options if you want to support in those ways. We're so thankful for all the support that we get in so many ways. I just came, and Valerie was there too from sledding. I'm trying to fix my hair, but we had a great sledding Sunday. So much fun. Maybe we can do it again in March if the snow is still good. We'll see, but otherwise we are meeting at the BU Nature Preserve at noon on Sundays. So we are located, Tom, in the southern tier of New York State, the Binghamton area, and Windsor is about, well, Sky Lake is about 30 minutes east of Binghamton. So we're out on 17 out there when we return for spring. So that's what's going on. Feel free to keep using the chat, and we're going to dive in today. I feel like I almost need like a content warning or something, but we're going to dive in today. It's Black History Month. We're going to address some issues of racism and white privilege, and it's okay if that's hard, because it's hard stuff. But I hope that we will be moving towards hope and proactivity on this topic. So let's start out with a poem from Maya Angelou, Caged Bird. A free bird leaps on the back of the wind and floats downstream till the current ends, and dips his wing in the orange sun rays and dares to claim the sky. But a bird that stalks down his narrow cage can seldom see through his bars of rage. His wings are clipped, his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown, but longed for still. And his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom. The free bird thinks of another breeze, and the trade winds soft through the sighing trees, and the fat worms waiting on a dawn bright lawn, and he names the sky his own. But a caged bird stands on the graves of dreams, his shadow shouts on a nightmare scream. His wings are clipped and his feet are tied, so he opens his throat to sing. The caged bird sings with a fearful trill of things unknown but longed for still, and his tune is heard on the distant hill, for the caged bird sings of freedom.
Spilled on the street, he was the rose that grew out of the concrete, the same ground where his body lay, like rose petals on a stony grave. Why do we fear each other from the lies of yesterday? I'll never know. Look at all these roses, petals on the ground. They call this one my ground. I'm asking you to look at all these roses, They call this one Trayvon Martin. I'm asking you to look at all these roses with petals on the ground. They call this one Type Sean Lee. I'm asking you to look at all these roses with petals on the ground. It's far too many for me. Tears of my mother were spilled at his grave. She knows the cost the whole world could not repay. And when she should have felt our sympathy, all we told her is that her baby was guilty. And do we even have compassion? Do we even want to see? I'll never know. But look at all these roses with petals on the ground. They call this one Freddie Gray. I'm asking you to look at all these roses with petals on the ground. They call this one Eric Gardner. I'm asking you to look at all these roses with petals on the ground. They call this one Sandra Bland. I'm asking you to look at all these roses with petals on the ground. Every woman, every man. More than a number, would we ever see how beautiful and special and precious you were? Somebody told me that if only you would better decide, you would still be alive. But I'm asking you to look at all these roses with petals on the ground, the ones from Sandy Hook. I'm asking you to look at all these roses with petals on the ground, 'cause they will change the story in our history books. So while we can, let's look at all these roses. Look at all these roses. Look at all these roses with petals on the ground. I'm asking you to look at all these roses. Look at all these roses. Look at all these roses with petals on the ground. I'm asking you to look at all these roses. Look at all these roses. Look at all these roses with petals on the ground. I'm asking you to look at all these roses. Look at all these roses. Look at all these roses with petals on the ground. I'm asking you to look at all these roses and say a prayer for all these roses. Shout out for all roses with petals on the ground. I'm asking you to look at all these roses. Look at all these roses. Look at all these roses with petals on the ground. The blood of my brother was spilled on the street. He was the rose that grew out of the concrete. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven
I am ever thankful for the common hymnal group that has written that really powerful song. It's called Rose Petals. And unfortunately, there's a lot more names that could have been added to the list of names that he shared at the beginning since it was written. But today we are beginning a series that is sort of relying on it being Black History Month and also February, which has the celebration of love included in that month. So I'm kind of calling our series for February Love Letters. So we're going to hear from the letter from a Birmingham jail, and we're going to hear directly from Dr. King. So let me share my screen again, and we're going to try to give him the airtime it deserves. So we're not going to hear the whole thing. It's about 45 minutes, but that's like a podcast. I would highly recommend just searching it on YouTube and listening to the whole thing. But here is a selection of Dr. King's letter from a Birmingham jail.
I must make two honest confessions to you, my Christian and Jewish brothers. First, I must confess that over the past few years I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in his stride toward freedom is not the white citizens' counselor or the Ku Klux Klaner, but the white moderate, who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice, who constantly says, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I cannot agree with your methods of direct action, who paternalistically believes he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by a mythical concept of time, and who constantly advises the Negro to wait for a more convenient season. Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection. I had hoped that the white moderate would understand that law and order exist for the purpose of establishing justice, and that when they fail in this purpose, they become the dangerously structured dams that block the flow of social progress. I had hoped that white moderates would understand that the present tension in the South is a necessary phase of the transition from an obnoxious negative peace in which the Negro passively accepted his unjust plight to a substantive and positive peace in which all men will respect the dignity and worth of human personality. Actually, we who engage in nonviolent direct action are not the creators of tension. We merely bring to the surface the hidden tension that is already alive. We bring it out in the open where it can be seen and dealt with, like a boil that can never be cured, so long as it is covered up, but must be open with all its ugliness to the natural medicines of air and light. Injustice must be exposed with all the tension its exposure creates to the light of human conscience and the air of national opinion before it can be cured. In your statement, you assert that our actions, even though peaceful, must be condemned because they precipitate violence. But is this a logical assertion? Isn't this like condemning a robbed man because his possession of money precipitated the evil act of robbery? Isn't this like condemning Socrates because his unswerving commitment to truth and his philosophical inquiries precipitated the act by the misguided populace in which they made him drink hemlock? Isn't this like condemning Jesus because his unique God consciousness and never-ceasing devotion to God's will precipitated the evil act of crucifixion? We must come to see that as the federal courts have consistently affirmed, it is wrong to urge an individual to cease his efforts to gain his basic constitutional rights because the quest may precipitate violence. Society must protect the robbed and punish the robber.
So grateful for modern wisdom that we can hear directly from the source. And we have more modern wisdom and nature connection time with a video from Rich, which I will share with you now. Anything you wanted to add, Rich?
I would say let's just go for it. I had fun making this video, and before I made it, I was walking through the woods reflecting upon the amazing diversity of the natural world, even in the winter time, looking at all the different plants and trees and animal tracks and sign. We'll see a little bit of this in the video today. Thanks.
Hi, my name is Rich Hanlon. I'm your Wild Neighbors Nature Connected Nature Guide. And for this segment of My Wild Neighbors, I wanted to just take a moment to share with you how the balsam fir is one of the most flexible and adaptable and beneficial trees in the Adirondack landscape. During the summertime, the branches of these balsam firs would be sticking out about horizontal. And the way that a lot of trees are, if they get heavy snow on them like this, they'll simply snap. But the balsam fir has branches that are flexible. Look how when the weight of the snow comes upon them, they will simply bend with the weight of the snow. We have a whole forest here beneath the canopy of red pines, a whole forest of balsam fir doing just that. The weight of the snow has bent the branches downward, but they haven't broken. So it's a very, very flexible tree, has flexible branches, and I'm tripping over my snowshoes here. Flexible branches. It's very adaptable. You look in different kinds of forest habitat in the Adirondack region, you'll see balsam firs behaving in different ways, shaped in different ways, taller, shorter, with the spiry tops, short and squatty at the top of the mountains. But there's another thing, it becomes very beneficial to the wildlife in the wintertime. I'm thinking of animals like snowshoe hares. So when these branches of the balsam fir are weighed down by the weight of the snow up upon them, it creates a kind of a skirt. And you see this balsam fir right here it's created kind of a skirt. As the branches go downward, there's a space between where the outer branches are and where the trunk is inside of it. It's open. It's open to a snowshoe hare or some other forest creature to go in there and hunker down when in the most frigid and inhospitable conditions. And if we were to get more snow here, say we got another 1.5 feet of snow, you can see how it would pile up around here and create a kind of igloo down close to the base of the balsam fir. Let's get a feel of what it might be like from the perspective of a snowshoe hare beneath a balsam fir in the wintertime. Here's the tracks of a snowshoe hare, and you can tell it's moving relatively quickly, like it's bounding, because you have the back paws in front of the front paws. So front paws are the little ones, back paws are the big ones, and let's follow these tracks and see where it goes. Right here is a spot where a snowshoe hare hunkered down for a little while beneath the branches of a balsam fir. We can tell a couple of things about the relationship between the snowshoe hare and the balsam fir by taking a closer look. Right away, we can see the shape of the snowshoe hare's body pressed up against the snow. You can imagine, here's the front tracks, left front, right front, looks huge in comparison to something like that of a cottontail. And this is the back end of the body back here, where the left rear and the right rear tracks were. We can also, by taking a look at this place where it sat for a little while, see here is the scat of the snowshoe hare. And here's a place where it moved around a little bit up here. And you can see this branch tip of the balsam fir has been nipped off, probably by the snowshoe hare. Here's some nipped off branch tips that the snowshoe hare was likely munching on while it rested for a while in this place before continuing on its way through the balsam forest. What I've just shared with you just barely scratches the surface of all there is to appreciate about the flexible, adaptable, and highly beneficial balsam fir. So get out and experience wild nature for yourself. Never stop learning about the forest relationships, and the more you understand and come to know about the relationships that exist in this wild community, the more that you will be impacted with the truth that you also are a part of the forest relationships. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.
One of the things that I will say is I made that video last week when I was last up in the Adirondack region of northern New York. It was 1 degree out when I made that video. And so before filming, I had to remove a fully encrusted icy beard. I just, because, you know, if you leave too much ice crusting on it can tend to look like ice boogers, and that's not good for a video. So that was another good adventure in the snow, and I hope that each of you are able to take some time this week to revel in your awareness of some of nature's relationships around you, and I hope that you are able to discover something of yourself in that process. Thanks.
Thank you, Rich. And thanks, Kristen, for sharing about the balsams at Sky Lake too. And yeah, I love that comment from Hannah, a new meaning of a tree skirt. Absolutely. And it was actually Rich's video, he sent it to me earlier this week, that helped me figure out exactly what we needed to do today with this topic at hand. So as I said, we're calling our February series Love Letters. And you probably, if you're thinking about love letters, you're probably not thinking about a letter from a Birmingham jail. But it's a letter that first came to mind when I started thinking about the series and what kind of important letters could we look at and use as our wisdom. So I know the celebrations of love this month can sometimes feel trite or consumerist, and I recognize that Black History Month is not adequate, that Black history is American history, and the repression of BIPOC people in our country's history needs much more than just a month to make up for all that has occurred. But it's still a place to start with both of those topics. So we're going to try to find a way of combining them. And I hope that by doing some of this work together as a predominantly white group, we can start to look at systematic racism and white privilege and live into our core value of one of our core values of being truly inclusive. And so I also want to name that this is something we strive to be. We strive to be inclusive, but there are going to be times that I get it wrong, that I don't use the best words that I could use, or that we as a community might not be as on track with being inclusive as we could be. So I'm asking to please correct me if that occurs on this topic or any topic. Know that it's a safe place for all of us to mess up or to strive for our best, knowing that we might need some guidance to do better. And I hope that we can learn and strive together for restoration and justice as we aim and claim to be about. So probably not first thinking about letter to a Birmingham jail, as I said, when we are thinking about love letters, but it came to mind because in addition to it being an extremely powerful piece of writing by one of our great modern prophets, as I tend to think of Martin Luther King, I also hear it being written out of great love. Same with that beautiful song, Rose Petals. This is coming from a place of love. When I listened to the whole letter from Martin Luther King this week, you know, I just thought if he had been writing out of hatred or contempt or worst of all, apathy, it would have been a very different letter. But it was out of his great love for humanity and his country and his church. He was writing to his fellow clergy colleagues, hoping to correct their misunderstandings and share his experience. He was writing it out of love for them, wanting to continue to be able to be in relationship with them and to help them understand what it was to be a Black man in America. I truly believe this letter should be included in whatever next testament of holy writings we have, because it continues to speak such profound truth to us even decades later. And as I listened to Dr. King read through this love letter, I just was amazed at how easily it could have been written still today, despite all the advancements that may have come for people of color in America. There's still so many issues. And then seeing Rich's nature connection, I immediately, as he talked about the balsam trees coming down and making a circle of protection for other smaller, more vulnerable creatures in the winter, I immediately thought of the bystander intervention trainings that I have seen, or tips for white people who are going to a protest. Be ready to surround people of color, you know, use your privilege to make a protective barrier for those who are more vulnerable. And so that's when it hit me that that's what we should do today. The best way we can respond to this love letter is to dig in and to do the work that he's calling us to do still today. Racism, unfortunately, is American history. It's white history. It's our problem to address. So I reached out to a local Black organizer in Binghamton who I knew has done some bystander intervention trainings, and he very generously shared a PowerPoint with me that he has used many times to train hundreds of people at this point. So I've cut it down a little bit for us, and we're going to move through it quickly. I know our time is limited, but I think it's still important for us to use the time that we have, that we can make a little bit of difference, help nudge that moral arc of the universe towards justice in the ways that we're able to. So I'm going to share my screen again. And this here is a time where you can feel free to share in the comments or ask a question. Like I said, I'm going to go through it pretty quickly, and you'll be able to see what's on the screens. But I want us to have this background information, even if it's a quick overview, and I'm happy to share the full PowerPoint with you if you'd like it. So bystander intervention is not neighborhood watch. A neighborhood watch are people who are worried about crime. Bystander intervention is addressing harm when they see it happening. So a lot of times crime has to do with property. And this is taking a different approach to seeing harm and intervening when that's happening. So that the first question might be, well, okay, what is harm? How do we define that? Different people might define that differently, but things like public urination, we don't love it maybe if it's our property, but is it hurting anyone? No. Graffiti, again, is it hurting anyone? If it's some kind of death threat or racial slur, yes, that is damaging. So there's different ways of defining harm, and addressing that with acknowledging our privilege, I think, is important to say, you know, who is this hurting? Is it inconvenient? Is it annoying? Or is there harm being done? So the idea of bystander began, if you took Psych 101, you might have heard about the case of Kinney Genovese, who was stabbed and murdered with at least 38 individuals watching, and no one did anything because they all assumed somebody else would. And that was in the 60s, and it led to people studying this effect that people are less likely to help when there's lots of other people present. There's reasons why, of course, psychologically, we second guess ourselves a lot. You know, the ability to recognize harm. Am I asked to help? Maybe they don't want my help. I don't even know what I would do, or there's a lot of people around, somebody else must be more qualified. So there's a lot of like mental dialogue that goes into deciding whether or not to intervene in a situation. And hopefully having reviewed some of this information will help us all feel a little more equipped or empowered to intervene in the times that we can. And of course, I think it was helpful to know that it can be as easy as just checking in to say, are you okay? Do you need any help? Can I call somebody? But I appreciated this slide that you won't know if you should intervene or not. You know, it won't necessarily be clear, but to think about, you know, just taking a second look, asking someone if they're okay. If it was you or a loved one, how would you feel? What would you want in that situation from an outsider? Those are all helpful things to think about. And to remember that there's lots of reasons why it might not be possible or best for you to intervene. You know, if there's a much stronger, larger person doing the harm, and you have any kind of physical limitation, it's best to find other ways to help than personally getting involved. You know, what's your relationship in the community? Do you know somebody around who might be able to help? And thinking about the culture of the situation, you know, is something happening that you're not clear on? Is there a cultural divide that is making you question whether or not harm is being done? And so these are all ways of stopping to ask, you know, to say, does somebody need help? And of course, we want to consider our privilege when intervening. If our race or occupation or community position might affect the situation in any way, think about your own risks. If if somebody is on parole or probation themselves, they might not want to intervene, or like their immigration status. There's lots of reasons why people don't get involved. And so that's why those of us who might have some more privilege or freedom can really be beneficial in some situations. So there is almost always something you can try, but I appreciate the stop, think, and then act reminder. Sometimes we get caught up in our thinking and worrying about whether or not we should get involved, but to eventually act is helpful in most cases. Sometimes the best things you can do are just to get people out of the way, get nearby children or other vulnerable people out of harm's way, just call an ambulance. He shares in the notes, this community organizer, that one time he saw a bystander just pick up a knife that had fallen out during a fist fight and throw it away. You know, they didn't have to intervene in the fight. The fight eventually broke up, but a knife didn't get involved. It could have been much worse. So it's just small ways like that can be really helpful. You have a powerful influence as a bystander. Doesn't have to be huge action. Sorry. There are always options. Here we go. So the 5 Ds of intervention: direct, distract, delegate, delay, document. And we'll get some examples in coming up, but direct is just to insert yourself directly into the situation. Distract, distract the parties involved in some way. Delegate, have someone with more experience or social power or authority intervene, make someone else aware of the situation. Delay, you can take follow-up actions to support the victims after potential risks have lessened, wait around for the ambulance to come or something and stay with them, and just document or film what the incident as a way of de-escalating and assisting the victim's defense. So here's an example. You're at a restaurant, see a woman at a bar being approached by a man she doesn't seem to know. He immediately stands very close and begins putting his hands on her leg. She's visibly uncomfortable, but he won't go away. No one around them seems to notice. Given your barriers, what might you do? You can distract, pretend to be her friend, go up and say something to her that will make this person think that she's not there alone. You can go up to him and ask him what he's doing. Ask her to come with you or something again. You could pretend like you know her, go talk in the bathroom or something, or make the bartender aware of the situation or to keep an eye on her. So I just thought these specific examples were really helpful for me when I was reading through this. So another one is if you're leaving work, you see a coworker's ex waiting for her, and he's been showing up wherever she is despite her asking him to stop. And so what could you do there? You could directly approach him, ask what's going on. This would be a great one for, I think, for another man to do. Or tell her that you're concerned, ask if she wants to talk, just let her know she's not alone. Delegate, tell the supervisor, HR, security guard, or talk to some of the friends in your office and talk with her, and note a group concern. So I believe this is one last one. You're on a date at the movies, you're moving up in line at the concession area, you see a couple arguing loudly. One of them is grabbing the other firmly by the arm, starts yelling through gritted teeth. What are some things you could do? You could talk loudly on your cell phone near the couple while looking in the direction of them. Just sort of be in their space, make them aware that people are aware of what's going on. You can tell the person to let go of them, that it's not cool, like take a minute, back off. Check in with the person who was being harmed, ask if they're okay. Tell the person at the counter what's going on at the concession area, find security, delegate it to someone else. All various things you can do to intervene. In terms of law enforcement, this is a photo that was taken a few years ago of an incident that happened near Rec Park right here in Binghamton. And the note here says that the person being pinned is a severely disabled child. So obviously someone stopped and took a photo or video, I'm not sure, but there's at least photo evidence of how this person was being treated. It is not illegal. You are allowed to take pictures and video police officers. So taking video, if you're told you're interfering, you can say, I'm just making sure no one's rights are being violated. I'm watching from a distance. You can keep stepping back as you're instructed to slightly, but you're exercising your right to record and document police activity. You can record names and badge numbers if someone else is already taking video. Try to stay focused on the police and not the victims in that case, and try to narrate as best you can. Just being present often helps de-escalate police brutality, especially if they know you're recording. Ask people around to help, engage with them, ask what's the problem, what did they do wrong, state your concerns. It looks like you're hurting them, they're a child. Police are supposed to be accountable to the community, so it's important that we hold them accountable. They have a lot of power, and with that comes a lot of responsibility, and it's not always used properly. So we as a community can work together to make things better. So there's a lot of great continued suggestions here, just asking if somebody's all right. Hey, what's your mom's number? I'll call her. Even if they're being handcuffed, it's helpful to let family members know what's going on, especially if the person's a minor. People don't have to consent to a search or talk. They can wait. So the final wrap up here is to be proactive, take small actions every day to create a community that doesn't tolerate violence. And we can be the change as we educate, examine our culture and systems that are at play, learn about resources in the community, and take some proactive actions like we're doing today. Spread knowledge, start conversations. When you hear people talking about these things, You know, I hope that you can feel a little bit empowered by our community to speak up. It's not always easy to, especially if you're the only person speaking up, but so many times when one person speaks up, other people feel comfortable to do the same. So I hope that you feel a little bit more educated and empowered in how we can provide protection and accountability for our community. And it simply ends with this quote that nobody has to do it all. Nobody has to do everything, but we can all do something. So that is what I was hoping to share a little bit more quickly with you today. But I do think it's important that we use the time we have to think about these things. And I know Valerie has a special time of prayer and meditation for us too. So I can turn it over to her.
And do we have the words on
Yes.
our screen? So when Corey told me the subject of today's lesson, I went back and found a newsletter from the Center for Action and Contemplation, if you're familiar with Father Richard Rohr. And so this was a guided prayer from a book, Conversations with God, 200 Years of Prayers from the Black Church. I believe it's called 2 Centuries of Prayers by African Americans. And so if normally I lead a meditation, this is a little different. If you would like to say the words along with me as a spoken prayer, probably with your mics off, sometimes connection issues, it's hard to say together through the technology, but we'll know we'll be reciting the prayer in unison if that's a practice that feels right for you. Or you can silently listen as I read the words aloud and let the words wash over you and see what arises in your heart as you hear them, if that practice feels more correct for you. O God of love, power, and justice, who wills the freedom and fulfillment of all your children, we thank you for the constancy of your loving kindness and tender mercies toward us, especially on this day as we celebrate the life of your servant and prophet, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We are reminded that in every age you raise up seers and sayers and doers of justice. We marvel at the way by which you shaped a young Black boy from Georgia into a towering figure of his time, to awaken the conscience of the nations, to rekindle a passion for freedom, equality, and peace, to redirect the traffic of human affairs from the back alley of bigotry toward the grand concourse of courage and compassion. We stand in awe at the marvelous networking by which you built a movement around a man of vision. It included Blacks and whites, Protestants, Catholics, and Jews, conservatives and progressives, rich and poor, business and labor. This coalition of conscience dedicated itself to the proposition that the American dream of freedom and equality could be made real through courageous action in a spirit of love, in pursuit of human dignity for all. This dignity includes all who suffer from homelessness, joblessness, purposelessness, carelessness, hopelessness. Because our needs are so great today, and your care so constant. We know that you are rebuilding the network of compassion around new visionaries who have assembled for this hour. Surprise us with the discovery of how much power we have to make a difference in our day. A difference in the way citizens meet, greet, respect, and protect the rights of each other. A difference in the breadth of our vision of what is possible in humanization, reconciliation, and equalization of results in our great city. A difference in the way government, business, and labor can work together for justice and social enrichment. A difference in our response to the needy, and a difference in our appreciation for those who give of themselves for the surviving and thriving of our beautiful people. Use this season to spark new hope and stir up our passion for new possibilities. Make compassion and the spirit of sacrifice to be the new mark of affluence of character. Strengthen us to face reality and to withstand the rigor of tough times in the anticipation of a bright side beyond the struggle. Inspire, empower, and sustain us until we reach the mountaintop and see that future for which our hearts yearn. This is our fervent and sincere prayer. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. And now is our opportunity for all of us to share our gratitude for today or this week. Is there anything you're particularly grateful for? Feel free to share it in the chat. And in the same ways that we talked about sometimes being the first person to step up and say something, whether it's intervening in a harmful situation or just sharing our gratitude or optimism, can be inspiring to others too. I am so thankful for the sunshine and for the wonderful day we had sledding together and all the people who came out to share that with us. It was really wonderful. Always thankful for moms. Yeah. Oh, a sharp-shinned hawk. Nice. We were trying to determine that. Thank you, Tom, for being with us. We share some thanks that we've already gotten some donations for the stamp drive that will be running all month long. You can bring them to one of our meetups at noon on Sundays. You can mail them to us, or you can send us money on Venmo. Oh yeah, happy birthday. How exciting. And yes, there's the link. Thanks for sharing that, Kristen. We're also excited to be supporting Vines this month. At the end of the month, we are going to have at least one Vines Garden Bowl team. Each team can be 3 to 6 members, and they're responsible together for raising $100 towards Vines. So right now, I think we have 1 team established, and if we get more than 6, we can do a second team. So just let me know if you're interested in bowling with us. on the last Saturday of the month from 1 to 4 to support Vines Community Garden. And now we get the chance to set some intentions for the week ahead. So is there a word or a phrase that you want to guide you this week? Calm. Yeah, I was thinking release in body and spirit, just releasing the tension. Helpful. That's a good one. Well, whatever you choose, I hope you will live intentionally. And I'm going to share our closing blessing that you are welcome to receive and to participate in for all the living beings around you. You can share this blessing. Deep peace of running wave to you. Deep peace of flowing air to you. Deep peace of the quiet earth to you. Deep peace of the shining stars to you. Deep peace of the source of peace to you. So we'll close out with our ending song, and feel free to stay and chat.
All right, it's time for our last song for worship today. Again, if you have an instrument hanging around, whether that's a shaker, your knees, or an instrument that you like to play in the key of C, feel free to join us for our final song, Peace, Salam, Shalom.